Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from the audience at SmithWeekly, including Matt S., Sean M., Cindy W., Brent S., and Scott S. On the program today is a returning guest of a company that has been with us in the past and one that we're pleased to have come back to talk to us. Mr. Brian Reinsborough is back on the program. Brian is the president and CEO of Recon Energy Africa, an oil and gas exploration focused company that is advancing work in Namibia's Kavango Basin onshore, of which the company holds concessions over about 8 million acres and is presently conducting exploration activities to potentially establish oil and gas resources that could be economically viable. Recon Energy Africa is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol RECO, as well as on the US OTC markets under the symbol RECAF. Brian, thank you for coming back on the podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me back, and delighted to have a discussion with you.
Brian, it's a pleasure. Great to have you back on here. Well, I want to jump right to company news that just recently came out. The company has made a deal through an extensive joint venture request for proposals and process, and they have selected so far BW Energy for approximately about 22 million Canadian dollars for an interest in Petroleum Exploration License 73 in Namibia. Talk about the process, talk about the decision making, and why this is important for the company at this stage.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was a milestone moment for Recon, actually, to get a joint venture established, and the way it was structured. I was really pleased with the outcome. But let me just step back and give you some context of the process. When I came on board last August, there was a VDR in place. I really didn't feel it was up to standards of what I wanted. So we actually scraped that VDR, brought in my own team, SVP of Exploration, Chris Zabrinsky, and some people underneath him, and they really built up the technical work from the base up, a building blocks approach to the petroleum system. And that process was put back into the VDR with a new technical story, new commercial story, new economic story, and we proceeded from sort of mid-December onward with entertaining various different companies in the VDR. I'll say a couple things about the process is that the people who came in and looked at what we had really liked what we had. And I consider the technical work in the VDR to be top shelf. It's the stuff you would have seen from any large independent or even some of the major oil companies. It was that good of work that Chris and his team put together. The traction was strong through the process. End of March and April, we were winding it down. We had some choices to make, and really what I was looking for was a strategically compatible company to Recon, who would add value not only financially but also strategically and operationally. And we ended up going down a single path with one company, BW Energy, to get to conclusion. Now, the process from then till now was lengthy. We spent a lot of time with them technically, making sure they understood the value proposition of our assets, making sure they understood the culture of the company and the strategy of the company. I actually made a trip over to Namibia several weeks ago with them to visit the drill site. So they can see the rig in operation, see the team, got them comfortable with that. I spent a lot of time with in-country people who I think are going to bring just a ton of value to us on success in terms of marketing and exiting our product, whether it's oil, gas in Namibia or in the southern part of the continent. They bring a lot of that local expertise that I like. And then I met with their CEO a couple of weeks ago to really look eye to eye, and is this a partnership we both want to do? We both concluded that it was for a whole host of reasons. He got comfortable with me and how I'm building this company up. And then we consummated the deal. The structure of the joint venture, as you would have seen from the announcement this week, is really creative. I really like how we ended it all. Of course, BW Energy is coming in at the corporate level as well, which is a huge vote of confidence for Recon, the new management team, and what we're doing. Of course, they're at the asset level as well. So it was a great deal structure. Happy to talk a little bit more about that if you would like. But the process was took a little longer than I anticipated. Them participating at the corporate level probably added a month to the process because I had to spend a lot of time with them. But really like where we're at here. We got a great partner. They're as excited about what we're chasing in the Demerara Belt as we are. So we're ready to close this thing in a couple of weeks.
A good indication. I think this actually demonstrates viability of what you're doing with Recon Africa and the assets that the company has put together. Obviously, going back many years, and of course the economic potential that lies here, and
Yeah.
the potential for Namibia as well, and of course Namcor and the other folks that are involved.
Yeah.
It's such a tremendous opportunity, and we're seeing success come across in Namibia now with uranium. We're seeing M&A in the gold sector. We're seeing offshore success. So this is really a good time to bring this forward, and really appreciate you guys getting past this milestone. And of course,
Mm.
these processes always take time. There's always due diligence and red
Yeah.
tape and all these things to do. So I really appreciate the comments. Do talk about the incentives and the earn-in structure, if I can call it that, and just talk about some of the milestones so people can get their head around what this joint venture can become if successful.
A couple of components of it. One is the cash component up front, and then the second component is a carry through development, and the third is a carry incentive payments on production. And what I want to do is have capital coming into the company each of those three phases. Okay, so on the exploration side, the cash up front, the strategic sort of dilemma that we had, a couple of months ago was we're never going to get the amount of cash that sort of equalizes the value of what we're giving up because we're testing such massive potential in the Demerara Fold Belt. So that's item number one. So when you're confronted with that reality, then my strategy was, okay, let's get a really good deal, but let's allow a minimum amount of working interest to be sold, and retain as much as possible working interest on success. So that's why we ended up at 20% working interest for BW, and they were happy with that. We are getting a carry on the wells and a carry on the seismic, which was part of the deal. Now, the big uplift for all shareholders is on success. And the first tranche is on commercial declaration. That's a defined term actually in our joint operating agreement. And commercial success is FID, final investment decision. When that's triggered, we get a payment of $45 million in two tranches, one at the actual FID and one after first year of production. And that really represents sunk costs, the equation that goes behind that $45 million number. That will fund us through development and to first production. The next set of payments happen on first production, where there's a payment of $5 million, an incentive to us to get production on as quick as possible. Then what I wanted to do is, okay, once we meet search cash flow horizons for our milestones for BW, then we get $25 million payments in three separate tranches. So every time they hit $300 million of free cash flow, which actually pays out pretty quickly, then we get a check cut for $25 million up to the cap of 80 million in aggregate. So those are the three buckets that was finally consummated with them. I'm really happy with what we have. I'm really happy that we have 70% residual working interest. So on success, the company can choose to sell down if we want to at a much higher valuation than we're at today. So all in all, the commercial part of the asset level deal was great. As we started working with them closer and closer, I floated the idea of converting some of the capital into equity. And that component was a win-win-win all the way around. And of course, that's a huge confirmation and a credibility stake by BW and what I'm doing as CEO and the management team. That really transpired in the last month, and I think it's a great deal for them, great deal for us. It provides tremendous strategic alignment as well.
Speak a little bit to BW here. Some of the folks probably haven't heard of them. I
Yeah,
have certainly.
yeah,
We know
yeah.
them as a participant in the sector, but some of the audience probably is clueless as to who this company is. Talk just about a little bit about BW and how their corporate culture, their projects, and their understanding of hydrocarbons led you down this path.
Yeah, yeah. So BW, they're a player in Namibia. Actually, they're one of the leaders in the offshore. They own 100% of a gas field called the Kudu field, which they're progressing towards FID. And the fact that that gas will go on shore into a gas and power plant and go into the South African power pool. That project is a milestone project for Namibia, and that it may be a collection of gas for all the big discoveries offshore as well. So a big role in the Orange Basin in Namibia, and they got a big project they're bringing online. Now, BW Energy is a publicly listed company. They're on the Oslo. They are Norwegian, so they're listed on the Oslo Exchange. Their parent is the BW Group, which is Asian money. They are private at the parent level. They are I believe, the largest or one of the largest transporters of liquid petroleum products on water. I think they have almost 500 vessels around the world for LPG, LNG vessels. They're private. It's hard to get a real grasp on the market cap, but my guess is north of 20 billion market cap at the parent level. BW Group owns 75% of BW Energy. So they're a major stakeholder with deep, deep, deep pockets to expand in the energy sector. They've been an offshore player. They have assets in Gabon, Brazil, and now in Namibia. They really had a strong desire and align with us to broaden their footprint in Namibia. So they really liked the technical team. They really liked the strategy, Recon, and how we're reshaping the company. But they like the asset a lot. Tremendous running room with scale, whether it's oil or gas, and it builds their footprint in a country that's really strategically important to them. A great, very compatible company for Recon to be involved with at the asset level and at the corporate level.
The interest in Namibia, I think, just once again points to the growing interest in Namibia
Yeah,
and
exactly.
where BW's positioned itself. So I appreciate your comments there. And then, of course, just for the audience, Brian's been around the block a few times. His
Yeah.
network in the oil and gas sector globally is quite expansive. So
Hmm.
what I'd like to do next, I'd like to step into some other activities at the company just ahead of this announcement that you guys announced the spudding of the Naingopo exploration well on petroleum license or petroleum exploration license 73. Talk about that work, Brian, specifically, and what you expect those initial results to be or could be. Give us, I know you can't speculate much here, but give us a flavor for how this is
Yeah.
going specifically here.
Yeah, the Nangopo well is on one of the larger prospects in the Damara Fold Belt. Damara Fold Belt is an untested fold belt that has tremendous aerial extent. We imaged it a couple of years ago. We shot seismic. These are big structures, well imaged on seismic. Just on context, the Nangopo prospect itself is about 20 kilometers long and about 5 kilometers wide. The next one we go to is Prospect P, and that's a little bit larger, about 30 kilometers long and about 7 or 8 kilometers wide. We have 19 of these structures mapped as prospects, another 4 or 5 mapped as leads. So on success, we're really opening up a play. And this is such an unusual position for a company to be in because these type of structures and these type of plays were explored for 40, 50 years ago. The best analog for us is in Iran, the Zagros Fold Belt, where there's billions of barrels of oil that has been found. This one here where we have it, it's buried, so you don't see a surface expression. Quite often, fold belts show a surface expression, which is why they've been explored for years or decades ago. But the image in the seismic really helps us define the extent of these things. Now, on the Naingopo prospect itself, our auditors gave about 180 million barrels for that prospect. We're carrying, probably some multiples of that internally, just because we carry more reservoirs. We map it exactly the same. But two main intervals: a shallow clastic interval called the Molden, which we'll probably see in August sometime, and then the deeper Octavie, which is a carbonate. We'll see that in September. So great to have multiple reservoirs going after in one well. Just increase your chance of success. And we're actually carrying 9 reservoirs in total. So that's sort of multiple shots on goal with a single well bore. But on success, we plan to fully log, evaluate, and sample this well, and then mob and demob over to the prospect P, and do the same thing: drill, evaluate, set production liner, and then after both those wells are complete, we'll come back and production test both of these to see what the productivity may be. And then our plan after that is to immediately drill 2 more holes one on each prospect, and then bring those 4 wells onto production for an accelerated production scheme to get cash flow going. We believe that if we execute that program, that we could have first oil going into 2027 and start generating cash and build up the scale from there. So that's the program. We really like the shot on goal here on both these 2 prospects, as does our partner.
Just to talk a little bit more on this issue, there's obviously been some folks out there, most of them don't understand, but there's been some folks out there that have alleged that, all of this is going to be dry and there won't be anything found. And, the skeptics, as you well know, which we deal with skeptics both on the investment side and also we're dealing
Yeah.
with skeptics in the NGO front. And I always say now you have to add an NGO department to handle NGOs. But what
Yeah.
would you say about, with your experience and what you've seen and what has been already studied and explored so far, the analogy you provided last time, talk about your level, given your experience, because you can't convey experience to the audience like what you
Right.
have, and that's true.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so given your experience, and I know your position is biased as CEO, but talk about what you see here based on
Yeah.
your time here and the amount of work you guys have gotten done in a short period of time.
Yeah. Most of the skeptics don't have access to the data that we have. Those who say there's nothing here, nothing dry, they have no idea actually of the data we have and the controls that we have on our interpretation. So I don't spend a whole lot of time mentally worrying about those skeptics, because their opinions are free and they can say whatever they choose. But I make my investment decisions. And remember, I put $1 million in this company when it came on board this time last year, and I did that because I believed in what I saw when I came on board. And that was just further confirmed with all the work that Chris did, and he put money in the table on this last equity round. But what gives me the confidence that every element of the petroleum system, whether it's a source rock, migration, trap, seal, all of those elements, you want to have that build up in a data constrained environment. You never want to have any one of those elements not having some data to help confirm that element of the petroleum system. And we've done that from source rock kinetics to source rock expulsion to migration to reservoir predictability in the carbonates to reservoir predictability in the clastics, controlled by nearby wells, whether it's the carbonates, the wells that we drilled a few years ago, or clastics over in the Wamba Basin. You want to have controls on all of those things when you build it up. And on structure, most people haven't seen our seismic, and the structural configuration of these large features are really well constrained. So when you add all those up, I really like the risk profile. And listen, I've been in the sector for 35 years. I've made 18 discoveries in my career, 2 giant discoveries. So when I see something that I like, people listen to it, who know me and know my track record, and that's the same for Chris Zabrinski as well. So I like the risk profile here a lot. You can't guarantee. There's always Mother Nature throws you some curveballs, but the interpretation build up and the fact that every element of the petroleum system is data constrained gives me a lot of confidence in what we're doing.
Want to discuss just a little bit more here on timing, Brian, just as far as one of the big pushes here is to get quickly to cash flow, as you outlined a
Yeah.
little bit before. Talk a little bit about just how you see that going as far as what folks could expect on schedule, assuming if you kept on your guys' schedule or were able to accelerate with this new partner. What do you see as potentially, maybe not commercial production, like full on ramp up, if I can use that, but where do you think you guys can start actually cash flowing? Is it 2027? Just talk about
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
steps to get there and the timing, if you can
Yeah.
speculate.
Yeah. Well, on our let me walk through our expected plan. That sort of gives you an idea of what we're thinking. This well here will be completed by the end of September, and that's when you should expect some results from Naingopo. We hear about a month of moving the rig across to Prospect P, and then 3 months drilling it, which brings us to January basically. 2 months of testing. We'll set production line in both these wells, so these wells they're not exposable. They will be producers. And then immediately after that testing, we'll come back and drill 2 more wells, one on each structure. Each one of those will take notionally 3 months. And so that will take us to the second half of next year. And then we have notionally about a year of planning for the development. We plan to truck crude from our concession to a place called Guffentrain, which is a railhead, and rail to the coastline to get onto public international markets. That brings us to the end of 2026 of bringing these wells on. Now we think those 4 wells would notionally come on between 6 to 10,000 BOEs per day and aggregate between the 4 of them. And that kicks off a ton of cash flow. And once we get the cash flow, we'll plan to further develop out our expected case, which is ramping up to about 50,000 barrels of oil per day with a centralized facility. So that's the path of to get cash flow, self-fund the program, and bring it up. Now, one prospect Naingopo, for example, getting up to 50,000 BOEs per day requires about 16 wells. Some of those will come on before you reach plateau. Some will come on after, just filling in the production decline. So that's sort of our path. We get oil in either of these 2 prospects, and all line of sight turns to early cash flow, and that's really important for us.
Right. Thank you for that. I think that's important to point out to the audience as to how you're seeing this. And of course, there should be results where people can be able to start to model cash flow results and all of those things in advance. So obviously, you don't have to wait
Exactly.
potentially to
Yeah.
2027, unless, of course, World War III could derail a few things, but we'll see how that goes, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I fully see that. I appreciate that. And with this JV process, the
Mhm.
first one being in process to be finalized,
Yeah.
how does the company look at future folks who knock on the door and say, "Hey, Brian, we want to get involved"? Is that still on the table, or are you guys going to take a break?
Yeah, we're gonna take a break. I mean, right now we're all focused on drilling these wells safely and efficiently, and have a positive outcome. So that's where the team is directed, is focused to right now. Pretty intense 3 or 4 months for a small group to get the JV done. So we're happy with a 20% working interest partner. And I think our strategy will be, let's wait and see the results of these wells and then decide what our options may be. I like having 70% of something that's quite large on success. So, no plans to sell any more interest into the market, no plans for any other financing. We're well financed. In fact, I've raised about $60 million Canadian since April. And nobody in the oil and gas small cap market is raising that type of money, period. So again, that goes to the storyline of Recon, the strategy, and the team that's behind me. So we're focused on executing right now. Nothing more than that. It's all about execution now.
Brian, I want to move to capital structure for a moment, then I want to get to overall market conditions and get your opinion on that because that's always
Yeah.
important. But let's stop on capital structure. So let's assume post deal, post financing here, where would we be on shares outstanding? Of course, you can give this today if you don't have that number. but cash on hand, shares outstanding, and then of course management's position in the equity.
We have about 240 million fully diluted shares outstanding right now. Then we have cash on hand. We had about $16 million Canadian in the treasury prior to this deal, and that was from the April raise we did, minus a little bit of G&A and such. And then this deal here, you would have saw last night, we closed on a fully underwritten deal of 35 million Canadian. We have a 15% shoe on that. So we'll see where that closes in a couple of weeks, but we're going to be in a great position going forward with cash on treasury to be able to handle an aggressive exploration program, which is what I wanted to do. When I came on board, and I think you and I talked about this in the last podcast, is that I really tried to change the finance strategy of the company from what I called an activity-based financing strategy to a business-based financing strategy. And what I mean by that is, a lot of small cap companies do a small raise for a well or small raise for a seismic program or, a $5 million raise for G&A. But what I've tried to do since April is finance the business for a year and a half, 2-year period. And why that's so important for me is that when I drill exploration wells, and I've done this all my career, my success historically has not been drilling exploration wells, but it's been drilling portfolios. And that's what I want Recon to be able to do. I want them to drill a portfolio of wells. And why that's so important is you increase your chance of success drilling a portfolio. No different from your stocks you may hold in your portfolio. You never bet on one company, you have 20 companies in there. And some will hit at different points in time. So when I develop an exploration program, it's not that different from that. I want to have a portfolio developed and drill the entire portfolio to make sure we ensure success.
Well said. Thank you for that, Brian. And definitely the portfolio approach makes a lot of sense, and we know just a little bit about that over here. And don't get me wrong, we love to
Yeah.
concentrate when we know it's the right folks. Okay, I want to move into just get your overall view on the market here, Brian.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
overall market conditions in the oil and gas sector globally. Thoughts on the oil market here? Any concerns you're seeing ahead? Comments maybe on the U.S. domestic production, as you well know that,
hmm
and how you see demand shaping up as we enter into 2025.
Yeah, I think the oil and gas sector is in a good spot. We like the pricing right now, sort of in the 70 to 80, 85 Brent. We think that's a bandwidth we're going to be in for a while with some ups and downs based on local events, but we feel pretty good in that bandwidth. Now we run a price deck a little bit lower than that, just to make sure we have some cushion and stability in our forecast. But the overall sector is in a good spot. West Africa, Namibia in itself has become, as you very well know, a hotspot globally. Every large oil company in the world is coming into this country to invest. Tens of billions of dollars are being invested in Namibia, and we plan to be there as part of that. And I think if we find oil, which we expect to find, I believe that Recon will have the first production in Namibia ahead of all the deep water stuff. That's just because of the scale of the offshore stuff and how long it takes to bring on. We see the investment appetite in Namibia to being very, very healthy. I've been there probably half a dozen times in the last year, and I find it to be a very business-friendly environment. The government MME is very open to investment. They're a strong supporter of Recon onshore. The banking system is secure. The corruption index is very low. So, it's not your typical African country. So we like all that combination of what we see. In terms of production, North America, they're pushing, I think, 12 million barrels of oil per day. A big chunk of that from the Permian. I think the U.S. production is going to plateau. And I think you've seen a lot of the investments sort of shed off some profits in the shales in the last number of years, and they're looking elsewhere to invest. Where is it going to be the next big ramp up? So I think you're seeing some of that investment theme migrate internationally into the exploration realm and into places like Namibia. That's all, I think, good backdrop for Recon. We get in there early. We have a great position. We're seeing some of the groundswell of investment theme help us where we're at. So I think the industry is in a very healthy spot right now. Namibia is on a cusp of an energy revolution. They don't produce oil and gas right now. But yet, I think this time next decade, they'll probably be pushing well over 1 million barrels of oil per day if they get everything right, onshore and offshore. But Namibia as a country has to look no further than Guyana in South America in terms of what that country has done over the last 7 to 8 years, going from zero to in excess of 1 million barrels of oil per day. So Namibia luckily has a great case study to look at in terms of how to get it right. And I believe the Namibian government will get it right over the next years and decades, and Recon plans to be part of that.
Brian, thank you for those comments. Thank you for mentioning Guyana. Interesting efforts there by the country. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we can appreciate countries that are seeking their own self-determination. And
Yeah,
I got to be honest,
exactly.
the climate change, Brian, over Namibia and Guyana are looking quite good. And so
Yeah, yeah,
these countries are in an earlier stage in their development cycle, life cycle of a country. I'm glad that it's flourishing because, like it or not, everybody today is using fossil fuels for lots of different things, and it's not disappearing anytime soon.
yeah,
And so, I guess with that, you did touch a little bit on, NGOs and
yeah,
some of the
yeah.
work there in Namibia, community
Hmm.
work. Anything specifically on the community side or NGO side, government relations side that you
Yeah.
want to bring up?
No, thanks for bringing up. I'm very proud of Recon Africa's community engagement on the ESG side. We have a very well developed, very structured stakeholder communication plan that involves communication from the Minister of Energy all the way down to principals in the field in the region that we operate in. I take that part of the business very seriously. It's our social license to operate, and that's just very important to me. We are very engaged in the communities that we're involved in. I think last podcast, I think I elaborated on what Recon has done in some of these communities. And you got to keep in context. In northern Namibia, it's a very poor region. Villages up there are isolated. There's not a lot of water. And what the company did from the start was made a $10 million Canadian commitment to ESG. And that's a big check for a small cap company. It's almost a startup. The one thing we like to highlight is we drilled 36 solar powered water wells for isolated villages that did not have access to potable water. And these are villages that women had to walk twice a day down to the river to get water for their families. And the problem they were facing, they were having a lot of crocodile interface with the women and losing 6 to 8 women a year. So Recon went in and drilled these wells in 36 villages. And if you wanna have something that touches your soul, go to some of these villages, and I did last fall, where they have nothing. You drive on this really rough road, and the village appears for a couple hundred people. They live in huts. There's no electricity, no satellites, and no water. But now they have a water well in the center of the village with two 500-gallon tanks where the villagers can come and turn on a faucet and get water for the first time in 20 odd years. That's what I call a generational commitment. It's going to impact those people today. It's also going to impact the children in the next several decades. So we're very proud of that. You don't hear a lot of that from the NGOs, and we're doing a lot of good. And in fact, we did a survey earlier this year, and those 36 water wells have impacted over 10,000 villages in northern Namibia. So we're very proud of that. I'm very proud of the educational component of what the company does. I'm a huge advocate of helping young people get educated. We support 17 scholarships in country. 10 of them being STEM, science and engineering, and 7 of them being for nursing up in the Kavango area. And that's very important to me because these people who graduate as nurses, they'll stay in their region up there and help their communities. So, Recon does a whole lot of good. And in fact, in the oil and gas sector in Namibia, we are seen as the gold standard. We're investing much more in the communities than any other large company currently involved in Namibia. So our shareholders should be really proud of what we're doing. We're always going to have a small voice who disagree with us, and that's the NGOs. And these aren't people from within Namibia. These are people internationally who are telling Namibians what to do. You're always going to have that minority. We tend to take the high road, not get engaged with them, and we talk about all the good things we're doing because I take that social license to operate very, very seriously.
Thank you for those comments, Brian. Yeah, it's funny how those NGOs, they're these armchair experts funded by parties that have, well, you know how it goes. But
Yeah,
what's what's hilarious about this is, these NGOs and stuff, and yeah, sure, there's always a good nonprofit organization out there. There's always a good cause here and there. There's no doubt, but predominantly
yeah,
it's diseased by basically what is considered modern day bribery, Brian. And modern day bribery is called philanthropy.
yeah, yeah,
And that's exactly what it is. And I don't care how you cut it, that's what it is. And there's always some type of a result and a push. And what's sad is even if you build a water treatment plant or build a school for the community, people look at that as, oh, you shouldn't do that. Why are you giving them gifts?
yeah,
It's absolutely insane. They don't understand real life or the real world. Anyway, I just had to make the comment there when you said that because I think you
yeah,
guys,
yeah,
amongst some other companies in the uranium sector there and a few others in Namibia, have done a tremendous job of
yeah.
working with communities. And last I checked, I don't see any of these NGOs out there with shovels. I don't see them
No,
punching water wells and using their
no,
capital. People have to keep it in context and understand that these things are critical for the building of an economic profile for a developing country, period. You're not going to
exactly.
get there by bird watching, okay?
Yeah,
You're not going to get there.
that's a good
So
point.
anyway,
Yeah,
appreciate the comments there
yeah,
on that and what you
yeah.
guys are doing. And of course, it's a continuous process. You always
It
have to
is.
keep working in these goals. It never ends. Really appreciate the comments there as how you guys are handling local community acceptance, keeping folks aligned, and obviously government relations are important. Let me just ask you, and I know we've covered this in the discussion here, what can investors expect from the company over, say, the next, 5, 6 months to close out the year? And what are
Yeah.
your personal expectations, Brian, for the company going into 2025?
In terms of catalyst, the JV was a big one, and share price will eventually react to that and see the value in it. The catalyst will be, the first well. We expect to have disclosure in that sort of the late September. It'll depend on drilling results and the extent of our logging program. But once I have confirmation of what I actually have, then we fully plan to disclose that. And then going in through the end of the year will be the second well. These are, we're testing prospects here that have size, but the scale of what we're opening up is a real story. We may find, 500 million barrels as first prospect, but we're opening up a play that has 3 billion barrels of oil potential, and we own 70% of that. So the context here, if we have success, then the value proposition is huge here. I fundamentally believe that I can build $1 billion enterprise here. That's my goal, and I've done it before. Will never be a straight line. I can guarantee you that. But my goal is to build $1 billion enterprise, and I think we're on a great platform to do it.
I don't think that's a terribly lofty goal at all. I think you're playing
No,
very conservative and traditional here. And I think it's the premise of under promise, over deliver.
yeah, yeah, that's our
So
theme internally. Well, our theme internally is when we say something, we're going to do it. That's my mantra since I came on board. We said we're going to do a JV. We did a JV. I said we're going to clean up the Mexican assets. We sold the Mexican assets. I said we're going to drill by July 1st. We spud by July 7th. So, when I and my management team go to the market and tell them what we're going to do, we are going to deliver it. That's part of our baseline underlying culture that I'm trying to establish in the company.
quite rare in this day and age. So I appreciate the
Yeah, thank you.
style and the way that you approach it. Very much aligned
Yeah.
with my thinking as well, Brian. Thank you for that. Well, for potential investors, Brian, who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization of about 270 million Canadian dollars. Why should Recon Energy Africa be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this stage, Brian?
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up because my strategy on the finances side was to bring more institutions into the company. We're almost 100% retail prior to me coming on board. The raise we did in April is 17 million Canadian. I spoke to 13 institutions globally, myself and Chris. 80% of them signed up then, and they were rewarded by almost 100% increase in their equity from April to end of June. But I want them in there because retail follows institutions, right? And I need a global footprint of institutions with deep pockets that are aligned with a long-term view on how to build an enterprise. And I want that because we have success. I want to go back to the people who got me here, and those would be funds that have deep pockets. So the institutional component that we're building on, and we further increased that in the raise we just did this week, is very important to build an enterprise of scale. Um, and also, as part of that, I want to have a global footprint on institutions, and we did that in April. We will do that in this current round. We got money from London, Hong Kong, and Australia in this last round, the April round. So having that global footprint, global coverage is really important to me.
Looking forward to seeing some of the things happen here in the coming months as far as progress at the company. Uh,
Yeah.
how should interested parties contact the company?
Yeah, the best way is on the website. There's a email link that goes to Grayson, our investor relations over in London. You can go to the website, click on that, send an email. Grayson is very, very responsive to all inbound inquiries, and then buy stock. It's on the market. We're at a good price point now. It's a good entry point. It's going to go up. It's going to accrete quite a bit as we begin to drill here. So now's the time to get in.
Brian, thank you for that and really appreciate the update here. Congratulations on the work done so far. And of course, lots left to go, but looking forward very much to progress in the near term. And of course, as you know, you're welcome back anytime.
Wonderful. I always enjoy the discussion. Thank you so much.